These are the 10 best settings that you need to change to start winning more ranked games. Our first super important setting is changing your dynamic range in the audio tab. Now, you want this on night mode. People will recommend you hi-fi, but this isn't actually good, and I'll tell you why. What hi-fi does is it makes it to where explosions are actually louder, as well as gunshots, and footsteps are quieter. But what night mode does is it makes explosions and gunshots quieter, and it makes footsteps louder. You obviously want footsteps to be louder so you can hear people on the map better and hear people flanking you more, while you want explosions and gunfire to be softer, because why would you need to hear that more, right? It doesn't make sense. If you don't believe me, I've brought you into a custom game where we're going to test this out. Right now, as you can see, I have 80 master volume with hi-fi on. If I press apply and I go into the game, this is what a sledgehammer sounds like. It's pretty loud. But if we go to options, we go to audio, and then we turn it onto night mode, look at how much quieter the explosion is. It's much, much quieter. If we listen to footsteps on night mode as well, this is what it sounds like. Pretty loud footsteps, right? And then if we go to options, we go to audio, we put it on hi-fi, it actually makes footsteps quieter, which is bad. That one's more of a slight difference, but it is quieter. So I always recommend putting on night mode. Now these settings get better and better as the video goes on, and the final setting will actually increase your FPS by at least 30%, so you need to stick to the end. The second setting, though, is even more important. Now, let's say you're an attacker and you're droning out the bomb site. You just saw, oh, their basement, and you're running your drone away because someone is chasing it. Now, let's say that you're running your drone away, and you get to the main door, and you're about to escape, and the prep phase ends. And your drone is stuck here. And then your drone dies and you have one less drone. Now, this one less drone, if you've played Siege for a minute, you know can lose or win you certain gunfights or even the round. If you want to mitigate this though and not make it a problem, all you have to do this, just go to options and then go to the general tab. Once you're there, go to drone after prep and put it on manual. This will allow you to stay on your drone even after the prep phase ends so that you can manually choose when to get off of it even if it's in the action phase. So in that scenario that I just showed you, if the prep phase ended and you were a second away from driving it out the door, you could keep driving your drone even after the prep phase ended, allowing you to keep that drone safe, giving you a potential kill and a potential round win. It's very, very important. An even more important setting, however, especially if you are good at aiming and you like to swing things, is going into your options, going into display, and changing your field of view based off of your aspect ratio. Now, this is specifically for PC players, so if you're a console player, skip to the next tip. As a PC player, you're able to change your aspect ratio, and the easiest aspect ratio to play on is 4:3, with the secondary option of 5:4, which is a bit more stretched. Now, if you're on 4:3, like most players who want to aim good, you need to have 87 FOV. If you have too high of an FOV on, like this, it makes things a tad bit more stretched than it needs to be, and it also makes recoil a tad bit harder to control. Most people have found, though, that if you put it on 87, it is a healthy balance between both having a less field of view and a more field of view while keeping the aspect ratio pretty native. But let's say that you want more of a challenge when playing the game, or you don't like the look of stretched res. What you want to do then is put it onto 1610. 1610 will make the game pretty base level. It's not quite 16:9, but it's a little stretched and a little bit more forgiving of an aspect ratio. 16:10, if you're on 16:10, will require you to have a 90 FOV. This makes it a tad bit more stretched, while also allowing you to control recoil a bit easier, again because of that happy medium that we talked about earlier. For most players, though, that want to get good at the game, stretched res, it's much more preferred, just because of how easy it is to see people who are swinging you, and it gives you a bit more of a reaction time itself. Now, let's say that you're on console, or maybe you just have a low-end PC. Well, then this tip is actually for you. Now, it's pretty commonly known that the lower you have all of your graphics, the better your FPS will be because the processor and whatever you're using has to work less hard. But there is one setting out of all of these that you should be turning on to high or very high, and that is your shadow quality. There are certain angles where you can see people's shadow before you can actually see them. The door for rafters is actually the best example I can give you. If you're an attacker and you swing to the left right here, the people in rafters, if they have high shadows on, can actually see your shadow a lot quicker than they can see you, due to the fact that the brightness for the map actually comes from over there, even though you can't see the sun directly. As you can see, all the shadows are facing this way because the sun is that way. It goes for the exact same when it comes to people if you have shadows on higher. So if anybody's on the left side of this door and you're a defender, you can easily see their shadow before you can see them, allowing you to get a much easier kill and just pre-fire them when they swing. There's plenty of other examples when it comes to shadow shadows just like this, which is why out of all of the settings you want on low, shadows is the only one that you want on high. But there's one more setting that will allow you to see people a lot better as well, and that is your crosshair color, which if you go to options and go to the accessibility tab, you're able to change. There are certain crosshairs that are way better than other crosshairs for specific reasons. Let's say I put on the white crosshair, which is a really bad crosshair. If I have the white crosshair on, it's so much harder for me to spawn peek on brighter maps, especially if your brightness setting is super high turned up. It makes it to where you're really not able to spawn peek at all, especially on bright surfaces like this if people are against a wall, as opposed to if you had something like a black crosshair, which makes it way easier to see on white surfaces or bright surfaces like this in general. But this is also a double-edged sword, because if you have a darker map or you're aiming at a shadow like this, it's even harder to see a black crosshair. So which crosshair color should you be using? Well, there's 5 that are really good. The first of which, honestly, just being the default crosshair. The default crosshair is pretty good because it makes it red on most weapons, and red is a good crosshair color. The only issue with this is if you don't like green crosshairs, it will make the crosshairs on other weapons green. So it's, you know, you kind of pick your own poison. The second good crosshair is green. Now, green is cool. The only issue I have with green is on things like this, where you're looking at bright objects when you're trying to spawn peek. It is a little bit hard to see people, just like the white crosshair. If you want to mitigate that though, put it on turquoise. Turquoise has a bit more blue in it, so it's a little bit less bright, mitigating this problem for you. Let's say that you don't like red, but you don't like a super bright color either. Well, then purple might be your style. Purple, I think, is a really healthy balance between a bright color and a dark color, allowing you to see in most lights. Due to the fact that night mode isn't in the map anymore, you're more often going to be spawn peeking bright colors than dark colors. So purple as a darker color is really good for you. And then the final crosshair color is red. Red is really good. It allows you to see in most lighting. In dark color, bright color, doesn't really matter. I just don't like how default it is, so personally I'll put on turquoise or I'll put on purple. The choice is yours. But with this next setting, you don't have a choice. If you go to options and you go to accessibility, you want to turn your screen shake intensity completely off. Having it on default, which is the first setting, will make it to where if you put an explosive device on, let's say, a window and you blow it up, your screen will shake a lot like this. Now, this wouldn't normally be an issue, and it does immerse you in more realisticality, but the issue is if you explode something and you immediately try to peek someone, your screen will shake a bunch, making it to where you're not able to aim at all when someone explodes something near you or you explode something in general. Even going to accessibility and changing this to medium, which should be a good medium between intense and not at all, is still pretty bad. As you can see, I'll explode this right here, and it still shakes my screen, just not for as long, which honestly does not matter. Why would you even put it on? But if we go to accessibility, we go to screen shake intensity, and we turn it completely off, there's just no screen shake. Watch this. No screen shake. And you can easily peek off of some ash charges, or you could peek off of a frag grenade and get an easy kill without having to worry about your screen shaking a bunch whenever you have an explosive go off. This is really good if you want to be aggressive and swing everything that's in a 5-meter radius of you. But let's say you want to bait your enemies into aggression or just play more passively. Then you need to go to the control tabs in your setting and go to drone deployment and put it on advanced. If you put drone deployment on standard, which is what normally comes with the game, what happens whenever you deploy a drone is you immediately get on the drone. You don't really have a choice. This is bad because if you throw your drone and you immediately get on it, someone that could be on the other side of the door could swing you, and you're locked in a drone animation, so you'll just die. But let's say you're smart, and as an attacker, you know there's a defender sitting right here because maybe you got an audio cue or a call out. If you change your drone deployment to advanced, what you can do is throw your drone out. But don't get on it. All you're going to do is wait. The defender might think, hey, this guy's going to get locked into a drone animation, so I'll just swing him. But you turned that setting off, so now you can sit here and wait and bait his aggression and kill him for absolutely free. You can do this in every single ranked game. People don't do it enough, and I definitely recommend you start. You're just one setting away. It also works on unique abilities like Twitch drones as well. It doesn't force you into an animation unless you want to get on it, which is very good. Not only does it work on Twitch and her drones, but it also works on Thermite as well if you put on the setting I'm about to tell you. Go to options, and right above drone deployment, which is what we just talked about, there's gadget deployment. If you have this on advanced, you can do amazing things as well. So let's pretend for a moment that you're playing Thermite and you're trying to get this wall open on Canal right here, and you have a Thatcher that's going to get the bandit that is on the wall. Now, As Thermite, if you have your standard gadget deployment, what you have to wait and do is wait for the Thatcher to throw his Thatcher charge, and then you can place your Thermite charge immediately. Now this wastes a few seconds of time that the bandit can abuse to trick the wall. Instead, what you want to do is be holding your Thermite charge out already, but you can't do this if you don't have your gadget deployment on advanced, because what advanced gadget deployment lets you do is hold out your gadget before you place it. So your Thatcher throws his EMP on the wall, and as the EMP is about to explode the bandit, you're placing your charge. Until your charge is fully placed though, the bandit won't destroy it, so you'll get shocked a little bit, but you'll place your charge right before the Thatcher explodes, your Thermite's finally on the wall, and you can explode it. This will save you a few milliseconds, maybe even entire seconds, so that the bandit has less time to react and put his bandit on the wall, which can be the difference between you opening a wall and the wall staying closed. So you want to make sure that gadget deployment is always on advanced, because there's other operators that this works on as well. Speaking of other and more aggressive operators, if you're playing somebody like Warden, then this next tip about quick peeking you definitely need to listen to. Now again, like I said, these tips get crazier and crazier, and at the end of the video, the final tip will boost your FPS by at least 30%, I promise you. But for now, let's go over this one setting that will make you mechanically a way better player. All you have to do is go to Controls and turn your lean onto toggle. Turning your lean onto toggle will make you have to toggle whenever you lean. But what this does is it makes quick leaning a lot cleaner. Instead of having to hold to lean and then unholding to lean, you're giving your keys two different actions in order to do this instead of just one action and the undoing of that action to peek instead, which is actually quicker for your fingers and quicker for your keyboard to register, which will make you just quicker and more clean at quick peeking. Especially if you get the timing and the movement down right, it's gonna actually be pretty easy. As you can see, I do not have my lean keys on toggle. I never have. I'm just used to hold, so it's what I'm better at. There's people like Shock who are amazingly mechanically gifted that just use hold for lean instead of toggle. So you can do it, it's just not preferred because you're just going to be a tad bit slower at it. Now this last tip, like I said, will boost your FPS by at least 30% depending on your PC, so you need to hear this. You go to your options, like I said earlier, when you go to your graphic settings, turning all of your graphic settings on low except for shadows will boost your FPS by a significant amount. That's at least 20% right there, I guarantee it. But anti-aliasing specifically I want to talk about. Now, for Siege, having it off is great, because if you actually turn on FXAA or TAA or TAA4, it actually does the opposite job due to the fact that Ubisoft is such a terrible company. So you want to turn anti-aliasing off no matter how good of a PC you have. Now, it is acceptable to turn it onto TAA, however, just in case you want your render scaling to be a bit higher so that you can spawn peek more efficiently and you want your sharpness to be on 50, just so that you can run more frames. This will make your game look a lot cleaner when you're turning, but also if you have it off, it won't give you the option to turn any of these on a slider, which will actually save you a lot of FPS. As you can see, the number here in change is actually pretty slight. It's only about 8 in its value, but turning it on to like this setting is like 300 more megabytes. So that will save you a lot of FPS, but mainly you just want to be turning all of these graphics quality settings on the lowest they can possibly go, including anti-aliasing, whether it be TAA or just off. I like TAA because I like my render scaling to be a bit higher. I say a bit like it's not at the max 100, but you get the idea. You want everything to be on low. I know it's basic, but that in and of itself is one of the most important tips because it will make your game run so much smoother. It'll give you so much more FPS, and if you've ever played a shooter before, you know that FPS is everything when it comes to winning or losing certain gunfights. So unironically, this is the most impactful tip that I could possibly give you for Siege or even for any other game that matter. With that out of the way, that's it for today's video. Check out this next video. My name's Alka, and I'll see you there. Later.